Hi guys, Steve Cerra here with another episode of Your Drummer Sucks. This time we'll take a look at Beat Detective. Beat Detective can help us line up this drummer to the grid and fix his performance. Unlike Elastic, Beat Detective does not time, stretch, or compress the audio. It's just going to chop it up into little pieces and let us move those pieces around. Let's take a listen to our drums. The first thing that I'll need to do is I'll need to figure out a rough tempo of what the drummer was playing. So in order to do that, I come over here, I make sure my conductor is turned off, I click on the tempo value, and then I'll play the drums and tap the T key to get a rough tempo. And it's about 96 BPM. I'll enter that as a manual tempo event on my tempo ruler. But before I do that, I'm going to turn the conductor track on. And the reason for that is Beat Detective will not generate bar and beat markers unless the conductor is on. So I've got the conductor turned on. I double click on my tempo flag. We'll call this 96 beats per minute. The next thing that I'll do is switch to grid mode, grab my drums and drop them on a downbeat that makes sense. In this case, measure 3, beat 1. The next thing to do is to open up Beat Detective. So I go to my event menu, I pull down to Beat Detective, and here's my Beat Detective window. We are going to do an audio operation. We're going to generate bar and beat markers. Next, we take a look at the selection section. It's very important that you have audio selected, otherwise Beat Detective will be looking at the wrong audio. So I select my audio, I click Capture, and my start and end points should correspond to the audio selection, and they do. Next, I'll take a look at the Contains menu, which gives me a choice of quarter note, eighth note, 16th note, 32nd note. We'll go with eighth note because the drummer's playing eighth notes on the ride cymbal, and there's very little 16th notes in here. Next, we look at the detection section, and we'll set the detection to normal and the analysis to enhanced resolution. Then we'll click Analyze. In the background, Beat Detective is analyzing all of our audio. Notice that we have our drums grouped here, by the way. We'll take the sensitivity level and we'll start to increase it. And what you'll see is Beat Detective will begin to generate purple markers. We'll zoom in a little bit so we can get a better look at these markers. And at the moment, the markers are designating quarter notes. My kick drum here is a quarter note, then I have a snare drum here as a quarter, there's a quarter here. So we don't have enough sensitivity, so we'll continue to raise this. And you'll see that our grid will start to look like an eighth note grid. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a really even, consistent purple grid with eighth note divisions, because that's how I'm going to chop up my drummer. And that looks pretty good. We're missing one here, so we're going to click and we'll put that in manually. And it looks like we might be missing one here at the end, somewhere in there. That's hard to see. The drummer stops here. Now that I've got my sensitivity set, I'll click Generate. And you can see up at the tempo ruler, we've got tons and tons and tons of tempo events here. The next thing that we're going to do is called clip separation. So in my operation portion of the Beat Detective window, I'm going to click on clip separation. The next thing we'll do is we'll take a look at the trigger pad. The trigger pad will determine where, relative to the transient, Beat Detective chops the audio. Now, we don't want Beat Detective to chop the audio in the middle of a transient because we're going to be able to hear that. So you may have to experiment with this. We'll try 1 millisecond, and then we'll click separate. And now you can see that Beat Detective has chopped our drummer's performance into all these little eighth note clips. Tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of clips. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to conform these clips to the grid, which means we're going to realign them so that they're on the grid. So we click Clip Conform. We're going to go with a strength of 100%, and we're going to click on Conform. And you can see that Beat Detective has now moved these pieces onto a steady grid with a tempo of 96 BPM. Let's zoom in here, because what I want you to see is that in some spots, there's a space between the clips. And that's why we have a function here under operation called Edit Smoothing. And what this will do is it will fill in these little gaps and smooth out our audio. We're going to click Fill and Crossfade, and we'll go with the default crossfade of 5 milliseconds. You can always go back and change this. And then we'll click Smooth. And you can see now that Beat Detective has automatically smoothed or healed these separations and crossfaded. Now let's take a listen and see what we have. That's pretty good. Next, let's add a click track and listen to this against the click. We're going to pull the level of our click down just a hair. We'll go back to our edit window and let's have a listen. And you can hear that Beat Detective's smoothing function has smoothed out all these little edits that have happened when we separated the clips. So there you go. Beat Detective to chop up your drummer's performance, straighten it out, put it on the grid. See ya!